Ever heard a story that just makes you question like everything you thought you knew about somebody?
Oh, yeah.
That's what we're doing today.
Yeah.
We're diving into a case so twisted, so full of smoke and mirrors, you'll be wondering, can you ever really know another person?
Right.
So buckle up. This is the story of Ezra McCandless,
Okay.
a young woman accused of a brutal murder and like the crazy web of relationships and deceptions
Yeah.
that led to this shocking crime.
Yeah, you know what's fascinating about this case is how it all starts. So picture this, okay? Rural Wisconsin.
Okay.
Young woman shows up at a farmer's doorstep, covered in blood, claiming amnesia, says she's been attacked, but the details are hazy, like a classic victim. In a way.
Seems like it.
You would think so, but then police find a body in her car,
Oh, wow.
a man named Alex Woodworth. And as they dig deeper, they uncover a story way more complex and disturbing than anyone could have imagined.
We're going deep into this case today with the help of court transcripts and a true crime podcast called Serial Sleep, which really meticulously lays out like the timeline and the key players.
Right.
There are a lot of players.
Oh, yeah, believe me, there are a lot. Ezra's life was, to put it mildly, complicated.
Okay.
She was raised by her mother and stepfather, and seemingly a normal childhood on the surface, but beneath that, that facade, there were cracks.
Right.
Ezra, in court testimony and conversations with friends, kind of paints this picture of a strained relationship with her mother and just a feeling of being misunderstood.
It's interesting, though, how she uses this feeling of being misunderstood, to shape her persona, almost like a defense mechanism.
Right.
So she changes her name, embraces this, artistic, free-spirited identity, ditches the cell phone for an iPod.
Wow.
She becomes Ezra McCandless, a struggling artist who rejects, like, modern conventions.
Interesting. So this carefully crafted image, this is precisely what draws people to her.
Right.
Particularly Jason Mangle, a man in his 30s who falls head over heels for Ezra's, bohemian charm.
Mm-hmm.
They move in together quickly, but there are red flags from the start.
Oh, yeah, like the fact that she's much younger than she initially let on.
Oh, really?
And conveniently forgets to mention that she can't contribute to the rent. It's like classic love bombing, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It's a textbook manipulation tactic, right?
Yeah.
You overwhelm the target with affection, move fast, create a sense of dependency, and then slowly reveal the true self.
Yeah.
The vulnerable artist in need of rescuing. And Jason, caught in the throes of infatuation, he is completely blind to these, early warning signs.
And Ezra, she just seems to have this knack for playing the victim,
Yeah.
Gets pregnant just 3 months into the relationship, decides on a termination, and then paints Jason as this emotionally distant figure who abandoned her,
Oh, wow.
but conveniently leaves out her own role in the
Yeah.
decision. It's a
Yeah.
pattern we see throughout the case, deflecting responsibility, always someone else's fault.
Exactly. It's never Ezra's fault, right? She's always the one who's been wronged, misunderstood, taken advantage
Yeah.
of. And this becomes her go-to move as the story unfolds, escalating from, these smaller deceptions to much more serious accusations.
And speaking of accusations, things get really messy when Ezra finds solace in the arms of, wait for it, another man.
Oh, boy.
And not just any man. This is Alex Woodworth, a friend of Jason's.
Wow, okay.
We're not just talking about a love triangle here. This is like a tangled web of relationships and secrets that is about to explode.
And Alex, he's a complex character too, right? He's described as kind, empathetic, but also struggling with his own mental health issues.
Right.
He is drawn to Ezra's vulnerability, her artistic spirit, and their relationship. It quickly intensifies.
Intensifies is putting it mildly.
Okay.
Their sexual relationship delves into some pretty dark territory, like elements of BDSM, knife play, even conversations about cannibalism. It's clear there's a dangerous dynamic at play here.
It's interesting how Ezra frames this relationship in her later testimony. She claims to be both intrigued and repelled by Alex's darkness, but she doesn't shy away from it.
Yeah.
She even tells Jason about some of their more intense encounters, painting herself as the victim of Alex's desires.
But at the same time, she's leading this double life.
Right.
Keeping Jason in the dark about the true extent of her relationship with Alex.
Yeah.
And all of this is happening right under Jason's nose, which inevitably leads to a major confrontation.
It's almost as if she's intentionally setting the stage for a dramatic showdown, right?
Right.
Orchestrating the events to, further her own agenda.
And that agenda becomes crystal clear when Jason discovers these explicit text messages between Ezra and John, another friend of his.
Oh my
Talk
God.
about adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
So now we've got a love square, a web of deceit, and a whole lot of hurt feelings brewing.
And this is where things take a really dark turn, right? Ezra, caught in her lies, lashes out with a devastating accusation. She claims John raped her, not once but twice. And she paints this vivid picture of being too drunk to consent, waking up feeling violated and traumatized. It's a classic case of Darvo.
Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender.
Exactly.
Wow, talk about manipulating the situation.
Yeah.
She is weaponizing a serious issue to deflect from her own wrongdoing. And sadly, it almost works. Jason, still clinging to his feelings for Ezra, initially believes her.
Right.
He confronts John, who admits to the sexual encounter, but insists it was consensual.
So this leaves Jason torn, right? Caught between his loyalty to Ezra and his friendship with John. He's desperate for the truth, but Ezra's manipulation has created this fog of doubt and confusion, and she's not done yet.
No, she goes full throttle, even going so far as to file a police report against John. It's a calculated move to isolate John, paint him as the villain, and regain control over the situation.
And for a while, it seems like she might get away with it, right?
Wow.
The police investigate the alleged rape, and John's reputation is tarnished. But remember those text messages Jason found? They become crucial pieces of evidence, revealing the truth about Ezra's manipulations.
It's like a house of cards collapsing.
Exactly.
The investigation into the alleged rape is dropped, and Ezra's lies are exposed. She becomes a pariah, ostracized by her friends for her deceit and manipulation. And how does she react?
How?
With anger, a desire for revenge, and a laser focus on Alex.
She blames him for everything. The breakup with Jason, the exposure of her lies, the ruin of her carefully constructed life, and this rage, this need for retribution. It ultimately leads to a horrifying act of violence.
On March 22nd, 2018, Ezra shows up at Alex's house unannounced, and things escalate quickly. Jason, worried about a confrontation, follows them. He witnesses them arguing, hears Ezra's raised voice, and senses the growing tension.
It's a critical moment in the timeline, right? Jason's presence, while unintentional, it seems to disrupt Ezra's initial plan. The police are even called to the scene, but they leave after Ezra and Alex assure them everything is fine.
They agree to continue their conversation in public, but instead they drive off together. Ezra is behind the wheel, and hours later she appears at that farmer's doorstep, covered in blood, claiming amnesia. So here we have Ezra showing up at this farmer's door, acting all innocent like a victim. But the truth is often stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
What really happened in that car?
Well, as the police start putting the pieces together, the events of that day, the picture gets really chillingly clear.
Yeah.
Inside Ezra's car, they find Alex's body brutally stabbed to death.
Oh, my God.
And the forensic evidence, it tells a story that, directly contradicts Ezra's claims of amnesia and self-defense.
Right, her story is full of holes.
Oh, yeah.
She says she can't remember the details of the attack, but her actions, they speak volumes.
Yeah.
There's no sign of a struggle in the car, no evidence of defensive wounds on Ezra,
You're right.
and the only blood and DNA found at the scene belongs to Alex.
And then there's that weird thing with the word boy carved into Ezra's arm. Initially, she claims she has no idea how it got there. Another convenient case of amnesia, right? But under pressure from the police, she eventually admits to doing it herself.
Yeah, wow.
Which further damages her credibility.
It just seems like such a desperate attempt to control the narrative.
Right.
To somehow shift the blame back onto Alex.
Yeah.
But the prosecution sees right through it.
Yeah.
They argue that Ezra lured Alex to that secluded location with the intention of killing him, and then staged the scene to make herself look like the victim.
And they present a pretty compelling case, right?
Yeah.
They point to Ezra's history of manipulation, her pattern of blaming others for her actions.
Right.
They argue that in her mind, Alex had become the scapegoat for all of her problems. The failed relationship with Jason, the exposure of her lies, the loss of her carefully curated image.
It's like she took all of her rage, all her resentment, and just channeled it into this one violent act.
Yeah.
And let's not forget the detail about Alex's phone.
Right.
It was found damaged beyond repair, suggesting Ezra intentionally destroyed it to prevent him from calling for help.
That detail, it really speaks volumes about the level of premeditation involved.
Yeah.
This wasn't a crime of passion, a sudden outburst of anger.
Right.
This was calculated, cold-blooded, and just chillingly executed.
So we have this mountain of evidence, the inconsistencies in Ezra's story, The forensic analysis, the testimony of those who knew her.
Yeah.
How does she respond to all of this during the trial?
She sticks to her story. She claims Alex attacked her, that she was fighting for her life, that her memories are all fragmented because of the trauma.
Right.
But even on the stand, there are these little glimpses of that manipulative streak, you know?
Yeah.
During Jason's testimony, he reveals that he's unsure if he's actually the father of the child that Ezra aborted.
Wow.
And the podcast describes Ezra's reaction as irate.
Wow.
Almost as if she's trying to, like, silence him with a glare.
It's like even facing, a possible life sentence.
Right.
She can't let go of that need for control. She's still trying to manipulate the narrative, even when all the evidence points to her guilt.
It's really a fascinating psychological puzzle, right?
It is.
Does she truly believe her own lies? Is she so deeply entrenched in her own twisted reality that she can't see the truth?
All right.
Or is she simply just a master manipulator so skilled at deception that she can convince herself of anything?
Whatever the answer, the jury sees through her performance.
Yeah.
They see the crocodile tears, the calculated attempts to evoke sympathy.
Right.
And in 2020, after a tense trial and hours of deliberation, Ezra McCandless is found guilty of first-degree intentional homicide.
Wow.
She's sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 50 years.
It's just a stunning fall from grace for a woman who, once seemed to have it all.
Yeah.
Charm, intelligence, artistic talent. But beneath that carefully crafted persona, there was a darkness lurking, a willingness to deceive and manipulate to get what she wanted.
Right.
And ultimately, that darkness, it consumed her, leading to this tragic and irreversible act of violence.
So now that the trial's over and the verdict is in, what's left to unpack? What are the lingering questions that this case raises?
I think the biggest question is why. What drove Ezra to commit such a brutal act?
Right.
Was it purely situational, like a culmination of bad decisions and escalating conflicts? Or were there deeper psychological factors at play?
Yeah.
Personality disorders, trauma, attachment issues.
Right.
There are so many possible explanations, and this case really highlights the complexities of human behavior.
It's true. There's no simple answer here.
Yeah.
We can analyze the evidence, look for patterns, try to understand the motivations, but we can never truly know what was going on inside Ezra's mind.
Exactly. And I think that's part of what makes this case so compelling, so unsettling. It forces us to confront the darkness that can exist within, seemingly ordinary people.
Yeah.
And it raises questions about our own ability to judge character, to see through deception, to protect ourselves from manipulation.
It's a chilling reminder that the line between love and obsession, truth and deception, can be incredibly thin. We can be so easily drawn in by charm, by a carefully constructed persona.
Right.
And sometimes by the time we realize we've been manipulated, it's already too late.
Absolutely. And that brings us to another crucial question. What can we learn from this case? How can we protect ourselves from becoming victims of manipulation? It starts with awareness, with understanding the tactics that manipulators use. Love bombing, gaslighting, playing the victim. These are all classic red flags that we need to be able to recognize.
It's also important to trust our instincts.
Yeah.
If something feels off, if someone's words don't match their actions, if we feel like we're constantly walking on eggshells, those are all signs that something isn't right.
And if you find yourself in a situation that feels manipulative, don't be afraid to seek help. Talk to a trusted friend, a therapist, a counselor, anyone who can offer an objective perspective and support. Remember, you are not alone.
It's so important to remember that manipulation can happen to anyone.
Absolutely.
And it's nothing to be ashamed of. The key is to recognize the signs, set boundaries, and protect yourself.
And for those who are fascinated by this case, I encourage you to delve deeper.
Yeah.
Explore Ezra's Instagram account, research the trial transcripts, consider the ethical implications of true crime storytelling. There's always more to learn, more layers to unravel in cases like this.
This has been a truly deep dive, folks.
It has.
A case that reminds us that the line between love and obsession, truth and deception, can be frighteningly thin. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and as always, thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
We've been talking a lot about, Ezra's motivations, the psychology behind her actions, but we can't forget about the real people involved,
Right.
Alex Woodworth, a young man with so much potential, lost his life, just a senseless act of violence.
Yeah.
And Jason Mangle, betrayed by the woman he loved, left picking up the pieces of his shattered life.
It's important to remember that, behind the headlines, behind the court transcripts and the podcast episodes,
There are real people whose lives have been, irrevocably changed by this tragedy.
Yeah, it's a heavy thought. And it makes you wonder, about the long-term effects of manipulation.
Right.
How do you even begin to rebuild your life after something like this?
It's a tough journey, for sure, and it's different for everybody. Therapy, support groups, finding healthy coping mechanisms, these are all crucial steps in the healing process.
Right.
But those scars of betrayal and manipulation, they can run really deep.
Yeah.
And it takes time and serious effort to rebuild trust, both in yourself and in others.
And it's not just the immediate victims that are affected.
Right.
This case also shines a light on the ripple effects of manipulation, how it impacts entire communities.
Yeah.
Friendships are shattered.
Absolutely.
Families are torn apart.
Mm-hmm.
A sense of unease and suspicion just kind of lingers long after the trial is over.
Exactly. This case had a really profound impact on the small town where this all took place. People who thought they knew Ezra considered her a friend. They were left questioning their own judgment, their own ability to, see through her carefully constructed facade.
It's just a reminder that manipulation, it can wear many masks.
Yeah.
And it can be incredibly difficult to detect, especially when it comes from someone we trust.
Right.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I think it's important to revisit those red flags,
Yeah.
those warning signs that we might be dealing with a manipulator.
Absolutely. And it starts with paying attention to inconsistencies. If someone's words don't match their actions, if they constantly shift blame, if they seem to thrive on drama and chaos,
Yeah.
those are all red flags that something isn't right.
And it's so crucial to trust your gut instinct.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're constantly walking on eggshells, if
Yeah.
you feel like you're being controlled or manipulated, don't ignore those feelings.
Yeah.
Talk to someone you trust, seek professional help, and most importantly, remember that you deserve to be treated with respect and honesty.
It's also important to set boundaries.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to say no, to challenge inconsistencies, to hold people accountable for their actions.
Right.
A manipulator often thrives on a lack of boundaries, on the ability to push limits and control the narrative.
This case is a stark reminder that manipulation can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
Regardless of age, intelligence, or social status,
Mm.
it's not a sign of weakness or gullibility.
Right.
It's a testament to the skill and cunning of the manipulator.
And it's a testament to the power of storytelling, to the way that we can be drawn into narratives, even when they're based on lies and deception.
Yeah?
Ezra McCandless was a master storyteller, weaving this web of deceit that captivated those around her.
Right.
But ultimately, her story unraveled, revealing a darkness that was both shocking and heartbreaking.
This has been a truly deep dive, folks.
It has.
A case that reminds us to be vigilant, to trust our instincts, and to never underestimate the power of manipulation.
Absolutely.
And as always, thanks for joining us on the deep dive.